America, we're a great country. We all know that. We have made mistakes. Remember this from history? Japanese Americans during World War II, incarcerated. It was a terrible thing, but America recognized it and tried to make good on what we did wrong. At least we did what we could. Take a look at this. I think it was $20,000 granted and a formal presidential apology to every surviving U.S. citizen or legal resident immigrant of Japanese ancestry incarcerated during World War II. It was the right thing to do, and guess who did it? Republican Ronald Reagan.
We gather here today to right a grave wrong. More than 40 years ago, shortly after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, 120,000 persons of Japanese ancestry living in the United States were forcibly removed from their homes and placed in makeshift internment camps. The legislation that I am about to sign provides for a restitution payment to each of the 60,000 survivors. Surviving Japanese Americans of the 120,000 who were relocated or detained. Yet no payment can make up for those lost years.
Ronald Reagan, huh? And by the way, the guys next to him, I think I recognize both of them. Daniel Inouye in the light suit, he became a senator. He was a senator and from Hawaii. And I think that's Norman Mineta on the right, became transportation secretary under Bill Clinton. Both of those guys were interred, I believe, as young adults, and they deserve this money. It was a uniquely American mistake, all right? We did this. Nobody else in the world did. We did it. 2 Japanese Americans at that particular time in history. Now, the fake news and Democrats want you to believe that slavery is also a uniquely American sin and that we did it and nobody else did. Our original sin, right?
We must acknowledge that there can be no realization of the American dream without grappling with the original sin of slavery.
From America's odious original sin of slavery.
Rooted in the original sin of slavery.
I've seen for myself how the original sin of slavery weaved white supremacy into our founding documents and principles.
Wow. Now, slavery is awful, but it wasn't uniquely American. Certainly wasn't original to us, America. It was happening all over the world. All over the world. And believe it or not, it still happens in parts of the world, notably not America, not South America, but in Europe, but in other parts of the world, you do see it. It's kind of crazy, but the rhetoric suggests that this is uniquely American. We're the worst. We're the worst because we're Americans. We have so much. Let's feel guilty about it. And let's come up with a reparation plan that would be realistically impossible to execute.
I support H.R. 40, which is the bill that has been proposed in Congress to establish a commission to look at reparations.
I have long believed that this country should resolve its original sin of slavery, and that one of the ways we should consider doing that is through reparations.
He's supported a study of reparations, which I believe is what's being discussed, and studying the continuing impacts of slavery, which is being discussed in this hearing.
You can talk about it till you're blue in the face. It's virtually impossible to pull this off. I mean, maybe you can get political points for it, but I don't think it's going to work, and I don't think it's holding people of color back. That's my sense, okay? Let's take the Holocaust. Talk about horror. Millions and millions of Jews killed in Europe. The ramifications of that will go on for 1,000 years. But they have overcome, haven't they, in spectacular fashion, Jewish people. But in this country, the victim mentality is so alluring, especially to Democrats, because they think they can score political points, but they can't fix basic problems. Now, you heard some of those speakers earlier talk about white supremacy. That's a myth. It's not a thing. There are probably 5 of them in the country, and they should be ignored until they commit a crime. But crime, street crime, committed disproportionately by young men of color, that is a daily reality that millions have to cope with, and no one is talking about. Why is that? I don't know, actually. Every now and then, a leader will emerge who will confront this problem and talk about it openly, boldly, but they'll also point out that, oh boy, I shouldn't be talking about this because I could get in trouble. I want to introduce you to somebody named Ben Ward, the late Ben Ward, former police commissioner of New York City in the 1980s. Young black men, he said, are committing the genocide against the blacks. They are ripping off the neighborhoods. They are doing the shooting, killing innocent people as they fight over their drug locations. He's talking about a certain criminal, disproportionate element in the African American community, particularly young men. It's a reality. And it's also one that a couple of decades later, Barack Obama was not afraid to confront.
Too many fathers are MIA. Too many fathers are AWOL. You and I know this is true everywhere, but nowhere is it more true than in the African American community. We know the statistics that children who grow up without a father are 5 times more likely to live in poverty and commit crime. They're 9 times more likely to drop out of school, 20 times more likely to end up in prison.
Those are pretty grim statistics. Growing up without a father, I don't think we'll ever be able to atone adequately for the sin of slavery. Not original, not unique. I don't think we'll ever be able to do it. There's no practical way. But talking about fathership in the African American community, as 13 years ago Barack Obama was not afraid to do, that could actually get us somewhere. But now we're having a phony conversation, ignoring certain crimes and highlighting others. Have you noticed how many police officers have been shot and killed over the past few weeks? Officer Kiona Hawley in Baltimore, Maryland, shot in the head in her patrol car. Sergeant Marlene Ritmanek in Bradley, Illinois, shot while responding to a noise disturbance. Deputy Sean Riley in Wayne County, Illinois, shot while responding to assist a motorist call. And Officer Richard Houston in Mesquite, Texas, shot during an afternoon call of a disturbance at a grocery store. Now, why haven't you been hearing about these folks? I've seen little bits and pieces on social media. Well, here's the deal. How do you say this? What you need to make news, to get a conversation going, a white cop killing a person of color. That's how you get attention. That's what they want to talk about. That's what Black Lives Matter can exploit for their own financial gain and political influence, right? I noticed no police stations on fire in those early cases, but George Floyd, there you go. Something very dishonest is happening here in this country, a one-sided and totally skewed conversation, which has resulted in some of our icons being besmirched and literally destroyed, defamed. Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson, one of the greatest people who ever lived, who wrote some of the most beautiful words ever conceived. All men are created equal. And look what they've done to him. Yes, he was a man of his times. And yes, he owned slaves. So he has no place in this world? It's not just a bunch of crazy kids. It's lawmakers in state houses saying his statue has to go, has no place here because he owned slaves. Here's what concerns me. If we go there to Thomas Jefferson, if they can do this to Thomas Jefferson, they're going to do it to God and Jesus. Have you looked at the Bible lately? Have you noticed how often Jesus talked about slaves? He made points about life in parables about slavery. The master of the house would appoint this type of slave for this type of, if a slave misbehaves. It's not politically correct. It's not that he endorsed slavery, no, but he certainly did speak about it. Should he be canceled? That's what's going to happen next. We have to be ready. How do we get ready? Not just being ready to have a fight and have that debate. We have to get closer to God. We have to know better what we are defending. I hope this makes sense.